Hello everyone, and welcome to my review and or analysis of the first two episodes of Better Call Saul that have been released as a season premiere. This video will be delving into spoiler territory, so if you haven't seen the first two episodes yet, then now would be the time. However, if you don't care about spoilers or have seen the first two episodes already, then we'll get started. To add one more thing, this will be a review of the first two episodes. I will not be reviewing any upcoming episodes until the season is finished, so please keep that in mind. I'm only reviewing this purely to give my first impressions on what the season has to offer, and what my thoughts are on it. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's begin. The first thing that came to me after watching these two episodes is how much faster the pacing has gotten. I've seen complaints from a few people saying that the episode is slow, but I heavily disagree. This might be the fastest Better Call Saul season pacing-wise. Nacho's conflict in these two episodes are extremely tense and make your heart pump faster whenever he's on screen. The Nacho scenes were probably the most tense I had ever been watching a TV show. I almost came close a few times to having a full-on panic attack. I think the reason it was so tense most of the time was due to Nacho's paranoia. The whole time he's running from a place to another place, and the second episode is where it really upped the stakes. Every time it cut back to the hotel with Nacho, I would tense up, and I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. The first and most of the second episode felt like a lot of build-up was coming its way, and sometimes there'd be subtle things that would freak me out a lot. Again, it really made me just as paranoid as Nacho, since I was on the verge of just breaking down, and when the twins came, it did not help my anxiety. The whole shootout scene was perfectly executed, and I couldn't breathe watching it. That scene where Nacho had found out that he was being watched was spine-chilling, and Nacho can just tell something wrong was going on. I've never reached this level of tension before. Even Breaking Bad never came this close to giving me a panic attack this hard, except for maybe a couple times where it came close, but even then, it wasn't on this level of absolutely terrifying and nerve-wracking TV. It seems that the writers have really upped their game for this season, and that makes me really excited for what's to come in future. What's even more strange is that the first episode didn't even have a Gene scene in it. It kind of tricks you at first, but it turns out to actually be a montage of what looks like Saul's house getting renovated. But more on that later. I'm guessing that they're either saving the Gene scene for the last few episodes of Better Call Saul, or they're going to put the scene in the first episode of the second half of Season 6. Either way, I can't wait to see what Gene is getting up to, and how he's going to deal with the cab driver. So at the start of the first episode, we see a beautiful montage of Saul's supposed house getting renovated. This seems to be during the events of Breaking Bad, when Saul changed his identity and left Albuquerque behind, and started his new one as Gene. Throughout the renovation, we see lots of tiny references to previous episodes of Better Call Saul, and I'm willing to bet there's a few future references here too. The new intro also plays, and instead has now completed the transition from having full color to now being completely grey and messy. The intro is extremely messy, and I love how weird each intro gets. It's like a treat to the audience. Of course, the messier the intros get, the more Saul has been corrupted. After the intro, we see Nacho running for his life. This episode is an adrenaline rush every time you see Nacho, because he is constantly on the run. Throughout this episode, his main objective has just been to get out of Salamanca territory. Throughout Season 6, I think things are going to get way more tense than the motel scene, and if that's true, then guys, I don't think I can do YouTube anymore, since I'm probably gonna die of a heart attack if there's anything more tense than that motel scene. Nothing too much has been happening with Lalo these past two episodes, but from the looks of it, it seems like they're going to be using him a lot more frequently in future episodes. From what I've seen of the trailers, surprisingly, most of the trailer footage that has been used for this final season is from the first two episodes. Of course, there are a few things we have yet to see, but I'm pretty sure it will all be covered in the first 3 or 4 episodes. A thing that has left me quite confused, though, is about the house Lalo visits. All he does is use it to pick up a knife, and after that, it was left there. I think it was because Lalo needed a place to go without getting spotted, so he went to a local village and got himself patched up. He then proceeded to kill the family, so they won't go around telling people. Again, that's just my interpretation that made most sense to me. Editor's note, the reason he went to the house is to find a body double for his supposed dead body. Sorry for the confusion, back to the video. Gus and Mike's plotline so far seems to be about Nacho and Lalo. Mike and Gus seem to have a lot of conflict throughout the show, which makes me kind of interested on how Mike and Gus have a stable professional relationship later on. Jim and Kim are trying to build a case against Howard for a lot of reasons, and I found it kind of interesting the semantics those two get up to. It was definitely a fun, lighter side of the two episodes, and definitely helped balance out the tone of the episodes without feeling too goofy or silly. But no matter how funny or silly it gets, it never crosses the border of the unrealistic. All the actions and dialogue feel completely natural, and something a person would do. I like how they are slowly trying to take down Howard. So far they seem to be framing Howard for drug use, but I'm sure later on they'll frame him for more crazier shit. From one of the trailers, it seems like they'll be framing Howard for picking up prostitutes next, which continually makes sense, since Cliff saw Howard with the prostitutes last season. So my guess is that Howard is going to round up all of Howard's business associates to build a case against him, but to also get some dirt on him in other ways. And I'm pretty excited to see how it plays out in future episodes. From what I also saw from the trailers is Saul bribing someone. I think he's going to bribe someone to testify or claim false witness against Howard, which will be interesting to watch. The characters in the show have also been incredibly fleshed out and developed, especially with Kim this season. Throughout the series, she's been slowly leaning towards the corrupt path. Especially in this season, it seems that Kim has been responsible for most of the plans to take down Howard, which is interesting. Either Jimmy is going to think that Kim is going too far, or Kim is going to think that Jimmy is going too far, and will do something in return. Either way, it's very hard to tell this early into the season. The people who I'm most clueless about is Lalo, Gus, and Mike's arcs this season. I have no idea what they could be planning, nor do I know what they are going to do, which is good. The less I know about their arcs, the better. I really want to go blind into this season, and I only covered the first trailer because of my hype for Better Call Saul. But from here on out, I'm no longer going to be watching any more trailers. I want to go into this experience blind and ready to get into it. But back to what I was originally talking about. I have no clue what their arcs are going to be, which is interesting because I still theorize that 3 of these characters are going to play big roles in this season. The first episode moves along at a relatively fast pace, however that fast pace doesn't get to the point where it feels rushed. They still take their time when they need to, and still have time to flesh out the plot and characters when needed. You can definitely tell that this is the final season of Better Call Saul by the rate it's going at. This first episode kind of reminds me of the first episode of the final season of Breaking Bad in terms of pacing. Both move along at a relatively fast pace without the feeling that they're rushing things. And going back to the beginning of the first episode, while I would have preferred a Gene scene, this feels a lot better. It almost feels dreamlike when you're getting shown around Saul's house being taken apart. Of course, this was done purposefully. I think they're saving Gene scenes for later because it might be a big reveal, or might feel better pacing-wise to leave it for later. And after rewatching the scene where Lalo visits the house, it's definitely clear upon rewatch that this is Lalo's body double, where many people have theorized. He's being used so Lalo can be confirmed dead, so he can work more freely. From the way this trailer was presented, it looked like Lalo's body double was going to be around a bit longer. But it's just as Mike says, it's not going to go down the way we think it is. Every scene in the first episode is tied together so nicely, I can barely give any criticisms to the episode, nor the second episode. I can only give nitpicks, but as my longtime viewers know, that nitpicks don't matter to me, since they don't affect the plot, characters, consistency, or anything else in the media. Which brings me to this episode's title, Wine and Roses. The title is based off the movie titled Days of Wine and Roses, which is a movie I saw and really enjoyed, which is about a man who takes a woman out to drink. At first she refuses to drink and only wants chocolate, but then the couple slowly become alcoholics over time as they move in together, and eventually the man becomes sober for his own good, and tries to convince the wife to do the same thing, but she refuses. The movie ends with the man remaining sober for his child, while the woman walks toward a neon-lit bar sign, signaling that the woman is still an alcoholic and probably won't stop anytime soon. That's pretty much the simplest synopsis I can give about the movie. And I think a similar thing might happen with Kim this season, where Jimmy might slowly stop doing these kinds of tricks and evolves into the Saul Goodman we know and love, while Kim doesn't change, and Saul being responsible for making her this way. I've also seen a lot of weird criticisms for the first episode of season 6 about how Jimmy isn't even close to becoming Saul in this season, which isn't true, and the fact that they are judging that fact from the first episode says a lot about the reviewer and the person critiquing it. The season isn't even close to finishing. Only 2 out of the 13 episodes are out, man. Come on. Episode 2 I especially found interesting when Mike tells Nacho's girlfriends to go and never come back, since Nacho won't be coming back anytime soon. They go and Mike breaks into Nacho's safe. He takes the father's ID and leaves Nacho's. He then replaces the safe with a new one for Bolsa and is meant to find with an envelope inside. Inside this envelope has the credentials for where Nacho is staying at, to make it easier for Bolsa to find, so Nacho will get killed. However, when we cut back to Nacho, he knows that something isn't right, like how he notices the air conditioning for the building across being turned on, and his suspicions are later confirmed once he takes notice of someone watching him. In an extremely tense scene, Nacho breaks off his air conditioning and sneaks up on the guy watching him. The man explains that he was just paid to watch Nacho in case he leaves. So he ends up calling Tyrus, and pretends that he's going to run away. The phone for the Watcher then rings, and Nacho then tries to escape, knowing that it was a setup for getting him killed. When he's about to escape in his car, Bolsa's gang arrives, and after an extremely tense fight, Nacho barely escapes with his life. We then cut to Saul and Kim planning out their next phase of the plan, which is when Kim mentions something that Saul has to do that he won't like. It cuts to him next to the Lady Liberty blow-up statue, and we then get to see the Kettlemans again. This was a wonderful surprise for episode 2, since I loved their characters in season 1 of Better Call Saul, and it made for an interesting arc in season 1. I also love how they bring back the characters for Better Call Saul, not just for pandering fan service, but fan service that actually makes it integral to the plot in many ways. It makes me interested in how they're going to introduce Walt and Jesse's character in this show, since I bet it'll be integral to the plot in some way. Jesse tells the Kettlemans the info on Howard and makes them sign some shit so he can't tell them. However, once Saul tells them, they end up firing him, and go on their own to tell people, which is exactly what Saul wanted, which I just love. Saul's plans are always so detailed and well thought out, and it just makes me all giddy when he executes one of his plans. Of course, once they tell all the lawyers about this, they don't really give one and think they're crazy. So when they confront Saul about this, Saul tries to give them money to try and smooth things over. However, they refuse, so Kim has to give them the stick instead of the carrot, talking on the phone to her IRS friend, pretty much as a big threat. But then the Kettlemans cooperate, because they have no other choice and they don't want to go to prison again. Saul then stays behind once Kim leaves to give them the money, and then they drive off, but only for the audience to discover that someone is following them, ending the episode there. What a great start to the season. Only 2 episodes in and so much has happened already. I couldn't find any flaws in these episodes whatsoever, so I'm going to give the first and second episodes of Better Call Saul my first ever 10 out of 10.